You're listening to the Youth Critic Podcast on KHZ Network. Find us on Facebook at DecibelUNG Radio and find us on Twitter at DecibelUNG. If you like this episode, please leave a like and comment on our iTunes page at KHZ Network.
To a night
And now for the podcast.
terror. Night of the living dead, the dead who live on living flesh, the dead whose haunted souls hunt the living whose bodies are the only food for these ungodly creatures. Night of the living dead.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to the Youth Critic Retrospective. We are here for the Halloween special. Wait a minute. It's not Halloween anymore.
It's All Hallows Day. Oh.
Yeah. It's the day after Halloween, but Justin and I are here to talk some Halloween because, you know, it's fun to talk a little bit about horror movies and, you know, we're kind of just lingering. We like to, you know, keep it going a little longer.
Halloween is a festival. Come on, right?
It is. And I mean, there's another horror movie coming out this weekend too, so fuck it. So with that said, everyone, we are here to talk about
Night of the Living Dead.
Yes, so we are here to talk about Night of the Living Dead, but we're also here to talk about Day of the Dead and no wait, I screwed it up.
Yeah, Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn and Day.
Yes.
Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. Not the Dawn of the Dead remake by Zack Snyder and James Gunn, but we're just talking the original Dawn of the Dead. But before we get into the two movies, and we will talk about the other movies in kind of a limelight, but we're going to start out with Night of the Living Dead since it's the 50th anniversary. It just had a Criterion release recently, 4K restoration, all that jazz. It's on Amazon Prime, blah, 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 blah. So, Justin, what did you think of the original Night of the Living Dead?
Well, this is, of course, a formative film for me. I didn't know what horror was until I saw Night of the Living Dead, and it reimagined everything for me. I decided zombies were the thing, you know.
Right, so I think for me, I actually kind of love Night of the Living Dead because this kind of did start the horror cinema of the 70s. Yes, it's 68, but this kind of started the new wave that kind of set us on the path of horror today. Mm-hmm. Because much like a lot of 70s cinema where we got this new wave and new techniques were done and new things were being discovered through all these other, you know, movies in the golden age of cinema, I feel like George A. Romero was pioneering the zombie genre into what it currently is today. And granted, the Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead have they've built up the zombie lore a little bit more for other filmmakers to kind of jive and use, but this is where it all started.
Yep.
And for me, this is where it, you know, became just the big thing it was, and it became actually scary and horrifying, even though there are some really campy moments and some of the rules are kind of inconsistent. But and on top of that, it's kind of a B sci-fi plot because it's talking about a satellite that landed from Venus.
You never see it as just sort of some newscast kind of a thing.
Right.
Going there. Yeah, and Night of the Living Dead is a seminal horror film. You know, before Night of the Living Dead, we had zombies like I Was a White Zombie and Nightwalkers, and they're very much the classical
And he had the
zombie.
Jamaican
Right,
zombies.
exactly. That's what these much more classical zombies. And in fact, these are the films like White Zombie is where the band White Zombie got his name from.
Oh, the Rob Zombie
Rob
guy?
Zombie, yeah, White Zombie, his band, was named after that film.
Okay.
But I know, there's some issues, but with George Romero in '68, he's sort of a precursor, and he's like an early outlier of the Tobe Hoopers and the John Carpenters.
The Wes Craven.
Yeah, those people that came a little later in the '70s. So maybe like roughly 5 or 6 years later, they started coming up.
Right. Well, right. Absolutely.
And so he sort of kind of paved the way for the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and Halloween and those things, kind of were acceptable now because this really, really low budget, super indie film got distribution and people really dug it, and it really started getting like legs and word of mouth, and it kept going.
Mm-hmm.
It was a sleeper hit, as they say, right?
Right.
And it kind of changed things.
Right. So, yeah, and that's what I wanted to get into because, so the origin of Night of the Living Dead, first of all, I have to put a shout out to Birth of the Living Dead. It's a documentary that came out about 5 years ago. I think the director's name is Ron Schultz. Might be butchering that, might be getting that confused with someone else. But please check out that documentary that goes into like the origin of the Latent Image, which is Romero's company, and it goes into the whole story. But for the purposes of this podcast, so the origin of Night of the Living Dead started out with George A. Romero was from the Bronx. And he kind of moved down to Pittsburgh to work on stuff like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yeah.
Of all things.
Mr. Romero and Mr. Rogers together.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, it's interesting to think because in this, and I wish this was mentioned.
Right.
I wish Romero was, because actually Romero was a big part of, like he was like this director, like a studio television director.
Right.
Of the
Yeah,
Mr.
he was working at
Rogers.
the PBR station, the public broadcasting stations of Pittsburgh.
Right.
When Mr. Rogers was starting. And
Yeah.
he did all the early shows apparently, or a bunch of them. And then this is his first feature. He went from Mr. Rogers
Yes.
to the Living Dead.
He did some commercials.
Yes.
I mean, just stuff that was around Pittsburgh. And he was able to raise about $70,000 to go out and just start the initial filming. Because I think eventually the movie ended up costing about $300,000 or like $200,000, something of that nature. But they went out and started filming in the graveyard, and then they went to the house. Mm-hmm. And that's just where they were, and they would just shoot, every weekend or just whenever they could get everybody together to shoot. And they shot in black and white because it was just easier. It was just easier to process. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't have to worry.
Much cheaper. Yes, much cheaper to do black and white in those days.
And they did it in the 4x3. Because they were kind of working with television cameras still.
Well, he came from television. So,
right.
I mean, that's what he's used to. And you think about...
Well, his production company did television
right,
commercials.
Exactly. That's what you've got. It's sort of like in Psycho, they did it on a super cheap budget, and Hitchcock just used his television crew from the Hitchcock Hour. Since he raised the money himself, he got his crew from the TV show. And these people were actually just TV show. They didn't work in Hollywood. They worked on the television show. So it's a completely different crew than he usually used for Psycho. And it's the same kind of thing. A rough and dirty, black and white, nasty little picture. And it's fun.
It is. It's fun and it's engaging. This is one of those movies where I was watching and I was like, this could easily be Paradise and not in that Seltzer Friedberg way. But it's just, you can do it.
Oh, God. I'm melting now. You mentioned those people's names.
It's so funny. It's so funny because, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of the origin of the movie. Please check out Birth of the Living Dead. It's a great documentary. Not only does it explore the origin of the movie, but it also explores the cultural impact, the historical impact of it.
I'm gonna have to check it out then. I'm gonna have to
Oh
see it,
yeah, it's fantastic. I've seen it a few times.
Is it on Netflix or anything?
It was on Netflix and Amazon, but they took it down.
Bummer. Yeah.
Because that's where it kind of started out as. It started out as a Southern flick because it was made by Southern filmmakers that went to Pittsburgh and interviewed as much of the cast and crew as possible. But it just but it didn't have. But yeah, it's just not on there anymore. It's still. I mean, you can still watch it. I mean, you can buy the Blu-ray. You can still stream it. I mean, it's available. It's available. Right. It's not like Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, I'll check it out and see. Yeah.
But going into Night of the Living Dead, so this movie opens with a brother sister going out. They're driving from Pittsburgh to somewhere down south Pennsylvania. I'm assuming.
I can never remember where they're going. I just remember they're really mean to each other, and then the zombie shows up.
And they're going on this expensive road trip.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Why'd you bury your father so far away?
And they're both dressed up. I mean, the guy's wearing a suit. He's got his driving gloves.
What the fuck? This is
very formal.
Yeah, this is I mean, this is if you're in winter, this is just jeans, shirt. This is a jean shirt kind of adventure, not a
And then the zombie shows up.
Yeah.
And the brother starts teasing it, doesn't he?
Yeah. It's already before the genre is even established, it's already deconstructing the horror genre.
Right. Yeah. They wrote it as a comedy, if I remember. Originally, they were going to do it as a horror comedy.
Right.
Yeah. But
it
got a little more serious as they went along, dead little girls in the basement and stuff. And
yeah. Well, I mean, Romero's always had a sense of humor. He's not Romero is known for horror, but he's primarily kind of a funny guy.
Right.
He's kind of a jovial, funny, aw shucks kind of guy. So it makes
it becomes more prevalent in the sequels, in the Dawn of the Day of the Dead. You get more of that
humor.
Wry. Wink, wink, nod, nod kind of thing starts going on.
Right. Well, and you get also more of the satire of American politics, and race politics and that kind of thing.
And consumerism.
Right. But yeah, it starts out, and then 30 minutes in, after Barbara, that's her name, after she runs barefoot to this little farmhouse.
We meet Dwayne Jones.
Yep, and when Dwayne enters the picture, she basically becomes catatonic because she's all fucked up.
And then, his character's name is Ben, if I remember.
Ben, yeah.
And that's a good point for me to interject here, because this was an African American as the leading man in the 60s. This is a very, progressive show, a movie that have this as a character in the time,
Well, Romero is very liberal, but the more reason that Romero said he casted Dwayne is because it was just because he was the best actor that they knew, in their friend group.
Yeah, and that's the way to go. I mean, of course, the best actor is going to be your lead.
Yeah, so they were just put him in, and we'll figure it out later. They never rewrote the script to accommodate an African American character, and as if I remember correctly, I mean, the script was kind of it could be played. Anyone can be kind of played by anyone.
Right.
The roles were never specified. It was just whoever they can get.
Yep. And then he gets to the house. She gets to the house and meets Dwayne, and you have some other folks that are there, and it becomes like an Alamo kind of a thing,
Yeah, they're all held
under
up.
Siege, right?
Yeah, they're all held up. It's kind of or Rio Bravo.
Right. Exactly. Which is a John Carpenter favorite.
Yes, which he kind of sort of remade in Assault on Precinct 13.
And several times. I've seen examples, and I believe this, where Ghosts of Mars and several other films, he's just remaking Rio Bravo over and over again.
He's a huge Howard Hawks fan.
Well, I mean, Howard Hawks was a good filmmaker. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's this. So, yeah, it's very cheaply that way.
Yeah. They're holed up in this house in one location, and you have this zombie siege.
Yeah, and
simple.
Just have some people that you've worked with over the years just come by and put a little black makeup on, or just black eyeliner makeup on, and then just, maybe tear some of their clothes or something, so it looks like they kind of been ruffling, tuffling.
Yep. And it's, and black and white simple for the makeup then, too.
Right.
That makes it easier.
And it makes it even simple for, like, the gore effects, because, you don't have to, like, dress it up to make it, you just have them, just get whatever you can from the meat market and just throw it out there. Yeah, it's very efficient, very simple filmmaking, although we would never try a lot of the stuff they do. Like, they throw Molotov cocktails,
Right.
Bust a car light, like, just stuff like that. So, or maybe we would.
Well, it depends on how much time you have and are you alone.
Yes.
And they also light the zombies on fire. Remember, they have the gas pump they start lighting things on fire. They actually burn. They burn the car down too, don't they?
Yeah, the car explodes.
Right. So I mean, there's some stunts on this movie to be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, and they burnt and crisp, a nice perfect couple that are they're just caught in the middle of this bullshit.
Right. Watch out for the napalm, man.
Yeah, and and that scene's kind of sad. And that scene for me is I know we're jumping around, but the scene is kind of it's always sad because it's the scene where just everything goes horribly wrong. Like, Dwayne's plan is actually pretty sound.
Yep.
Let's just, go over with our empty truck and just fill it up. Let's go in, fill it up, and that way and then come back, grab everyone, and then just head to Willard Fire Department or wherever.
Yeah.
And that way we'll be safe. We'll be in a shelter. They'll fix Karen, their daughter, the couple's daughter. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Yeah. It's a sound plan, but it all goes horribly awry when the girlfriend comes out and she's like, and then she has a moment where she's like, oh fuck, I shouldn't have done that, but she goes anyway, and then the plan it's just like a snowball effect of like just bad things happening over and over and over. So and it all leads to and the snowball effect doesn't even stop when the car explodes,
Right.
because when you get back to the house with Ben and Helen and Karen, Barbara, all them, they're all like, the husband character's like, fuck, we fucked up, everything's out of control, we're gonna die, I gotta grab the gun, I gotta shoot some fucking people, it's basically the equivalent of white male panic.
He's paraphrasing the dialogue, by the way.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
And they have those stereotypes, and they've built on those since then. That now they have those characters, and they did it well in that film. But there's some movies nowadays where they do it quite annoyingly.
It's and for Romero, Romero's not like the most professional screenwriter. He's no Aaron Sorkin.
No. But I'm saying there are other people who have done knockoffs since then and tone. Things, the crazy white guy who goes out of, and I'm like, dude, let's just shoot the guy, let's just shoot him right now at the beginning,
Yeah.
Let's shoot this guy, okay, that's
Or
crazy.
it makes it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like it, but the thing is, his plan of going in the cellar and barricading actually ended up working, so he wasn't that crazy.
Then there's the, shortly after that, the daughter that you're speaking of, who is a zombie who turns into a zombie and winds up troweling people to death.
Yeah. It's a little weird how that works,
Yeah.
but I guess she had like such a hard time getting Daddy open that she was like, fuck it, I'll just get the
trowel
and open Mama up.
For me, it's an interesting thing. There's a bit of a tonal shift, during that period. It gets a lot more atmospheric and
darker.
Dark, and there's a lot more, psychological horror going on in that sequence in the basement with the trowel wielding, 10-year-old girl, right?
Right. Well, I think what's happened is it's so well established, these characters. They're cliched, but they're easy to latch onto, and you do care about them.
And that's the thing, just because something's a cliche or a trope or something doesn't mean you can't use it. Just be aware of it and use it effectively.
And try and use it in a way and use it to your own advantage,
Yeah,
not to your disadvantage.
Use it effectively. Yes. Use it effectively.
But I think the reason why, because you have to kind of remember when this movie came out, this kind of just like wow, like whoa,
Right.
this is too much. Like,
Yeah.
but then again, horror movies at that time were the Hammer horror, where it was kind of a little safer, a little more.
Well, Hammer horror, they're, not this, but they were pushing the edge with the sex and the violence that they implied before that. They were going farther, because if you look at like the Shirley Jackson movies and stuff like that, The Haunting and Haunting of Hill House, and earlier, and White Zombie, and the Universal
Monsters.
1930s pictures movies like Frankenstein and the Wolfman,
Dracula.
Dracula, those things, everything was off screen. That all the violence and all the sex was completely off screen.
And here it's pretty much in your face.
Yeah.
And not only is it in your face, but with the context of what's happening, I mean, in this movie, everything goes to shit. And I think George A. Romero does a great enough job of where, yeah, some of these characters are cliched. You don't really care about the husband character. But in the end, you see this family unit. You
Yep.
see the couple unit. You see the one, smart guy with Ben. You see the girl who's basically all fucked up / catatonic. And you care about all these characters enough to where you want to see them escape. And then when everything snowball effect wise goes to shit, it's pretty effective. And the movie ends in an even more, gut punch way with Ben dying at the end. He's the last remaining survivor, but he's shot in the head.
Right, he survives the zombies,
But he doesn't survive the cops.
They're like the not the cops, they're the
militia
the people that have been deputized. They're like the searchers. They've been going out to clean up crew.
Okay.
They're like hunters and stuff that have been drafted by the police.
Right.
To go out.
Anyone that has a gun, come out and help us.
Yeah, you're a hunter. Come out and shoot the rest of the zombies in the head. So he gets mistaken for a zombie. He's right there at rescue. These are the living coming, and they shoot him because they think he's a zombie.
Yeah.
Irony.
Irony and political subtext. Because also you have to remember, he has a gun in his hand, so maybe they were saying that. It's all little bitty political subtext details that maybe Romero didn't intend on putting in there, but it just seeped in further. Because, and actually a fun fact, when Romero finished the movie, because he was also one of the editors on the movie, when they finished, they put it in the back of the truck, and then as they were driving, they heard that Martin Luther King had died. Like as they were driving to take the movie to screen it for some distributors. So Night of the Living Dead kind of came at a pretty hot moment.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the decade they'd had. The Vietnam War was ramping up, and we're getting to the
It was
the height
pretty
of
much
it. And JFK was murdered.
The Apollo 11 mission hadn't happened yet.
No, but it's next year, '69 is when that happens. But you've had the JFK assassination. MLK is assassinated.
I think Malcolm X was also.
The summer of '68, they have the riot at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Malcolm X is assassinated. There's a lot of stuff. There's bombings on school campuses. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the '60s.
Yeah, so to make a movie where the world is going to shit, and then to end it as, the best characters in the movie, or the best character in the movie dies.
Yep.
Is pretty profound.
Yep.
So it very much hit the zeitgeist very, very harshly.
Yep. And it's a true horror movie. There are a lot of times where horror movies, as they call them, wind up with a happy ending.
And they're fun.
Yeah,
and they're just like funhouse movies.
Yeah, the main characters wind up rescuing everybody and vanquishing the evil entity of whatever sort, and going back to their family. It's not a horror movie. It's a redemption movie. True horror movie. The bad guy wins, and the good guys get smashed. That's a real horror movie. That's a true horror movie. And Ben in this signifies that. He's the best person in the film. He's the smartest, the most resourceful, and he dies at the end of this film. That is a true horror film. because of the bleakness and the horror that it talks about in our everyday life.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I sent a tweet last night about this, but basically Night of the Living Dead is just a story of a black man that's like woking everybody, but no one's having it.
Allegorical much.
Yeah. So especially the Barbara, who like every time like he tries to like tell her like what's going on, even like puts her in front of the radio, puts her in front of the television. She's just like,
Yeah.
She's just
there is that.
she's just a privileged white woman who's just losing her shit over this. And that's why I find it still impactful today, is that it just hit the zeitgeist like just perfectly, and on top of that, like it's still scary. Like admittedly, there's no blood, and the gore is pretty much just dried up, sausage links. Yeah. Essentially, or stuff they kind of just made up on the fly.
And in the Half-Light, they're talking about, you see a lot of it, it's the zombies out in the yard in the middle of the night. They're chewing on something in the dark, in this really gloomy environment,
Yeah, where it's very hard to tell what's going on.
Right.
But it still is effective and horrifying, even to this day. I was watching the original Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, not Rob Zombie's Halloween. And I respect Halloween very much. Like, I respect what it did for the slasher genre. I respect a lot of it. But I think as I grow older, the movie just doesn't become as scary. There's still scary moments in Halloween, like the scene where Laurie is running up to the house, and then you just see that lockdown shot of Michael just coming closer to the house. Yeah, that's still scarier than like anything that's in half of modern horror cinema.
They still use that in slasher and monster movies to this day. That kind of resolute lockdown shot of the approaching evil.
Right.
They still use that.
Yeah, and that shot is still scarier and more intimidating than like half of anything that's in horror movies today. But still, I mean, there's kind of some campy effects, campy stuff that happens in Halloween. Whereas here, Night of the Living Dead, it's still effective because you have the political context. You genuinely do care about the characters. You genuinely care about what's happening in this in the frame, and you genuinely. And at the end, you were devastated by what happens.
Yeah. No, it's one of my favorite horror films of all time. Mm-hmm. I mean, Night of the Living Dead, that is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, Halloween is good, too. But
it is really good. I don't want to diss Halloween. I still think it's a good quality movie. But
Night of the Living Dead had such an impact and made such a difference in the way we see film and see horror. It's a good little film. It's tight, it's dirty, it's nasty, but it's also revolutionary.
And and its distribution model and its techniques, and we won't dive into this because I know it's kind of boring. But the way
are we going to talk about House Nut and the distribution model of film theaters? Or are we going to talk about four walling?
No. Well, no, but it's the way it distributed itself, the way it became this cultural icon. Like you said, a sleeper hit.
Yep.
Is really incredible because it just became this, massive thing. But the thing was, they struggled to get released because no one really didn't know what it was, or they just didn't. So what happened was the company that did distribute it, they didn't put a copyright in it. So the movie it's pretty much public domain.
Yep.
I mean, I know Criterion, they had to kind of get some money to get a really good print of the movie so they can do a 4K, their kind of 4K restoration. But I mean, the movie is public domain. You can watch it free pretty much anywhere.
Right, YouTube, whatever. Yep.
Yeah. It's still, so it is hard to track how much the money has made over time, but the movie still, it found a way through drive-ins and kind of grimy grindhouse cinemas. Where yeah, it wasn't like a huge hit. I mean, Roger Ebert at the time did admittedly not like the movie. But I mean, in the end, I mean, everyone kind of grew on it once they kind of got that grimy filter or that grimy lens away from it. So, and it became a cultural phenomenon, and it got a better light when it started being put into museums and whatnot. So, yeah. Do you have any more to say on Night of the Living Dead?
Well, I mean, I would just say that if you take it as that
face value, or
as that low budget film that outperforms the projection, you'll get the same thing like from the Blumhouse pictures, those and those James Wan movies, like the those found footage things,
right?
And Roger Corman, these low budget horror films that get a lot of mileage out of a very simple and very, very tight budget and very simple stories
and inventive.
Right, but they do it simply and straightforward. There's this real kind of efficiency to all these guys that and Romero in this film especially showed a great deal of that in that kind of a movement.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I think I mean, they, on one hand, I mean, they kind of had to, but still, it shows what you can do on a simple budget once if you know what you're doing. Because I mean, Romero was young when he made this movie, but still, he had to work up the ladder and get a lot under his belt in order to kind of figure out how to block and frame this movie. So yeah, I think you're right. The simplicity in it matters. What you can do on a low budget. So with that, do you want to go?
I guess that I would just say that simplicity is very close to the same kind of very handheld, very simple setup kind of things like the French New Wave were doing a few years earlier, and he adapted that into a genre film.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we're going to talk about Dawn of the Dead.
In 1968, George Romero brought us Night of the Living Dead. It became the classic horror film of its time.
Not that room! Not that room!
Now, George Romero brings us the most intensely shocking motion picture experience for all times.
It gets up and kills. The people it kills get up and kill. This situation must be controlled before it's too late. They are multiplying too rapidly.
Dawn of the Dead.
Meet me on the roof at 9 o'clock. Getting out.
I don't believe
We're
it.
gonna
What?
get out in the chopper. We've got to survive. Somebody's got to survive.
They kill for one reason. They kill for food. They eat their victims.
Imagine, if you will, that something has gone terribly wrong.
Shoot it, man.
Now, accept the fact that there's no escaping the horrible consequences. George Romero brings back the dead. Night of the Living Dead has ended.
So, quickly to get the origin of Dawn out of the way, after Night of the Living Dead, George A. Romero just kind of went back to, he just did some more different kind of movies, like Season of the Witch, Martin. He did do a sort of similar, not necessarily a zombie movie, but he did a movie called The Crazies, which was more of a disease horror film.
It's a zombie movie.
Okay, well, fine.
I mean, they're just a different kind of zombie, but they wind up being crazy, people eating zombies, even though it's
crazy people eating people.
Yeah, but they do it. It's the same kind of thing here. These people have lost their minds and they're eating you. So
okay. So yeah. But Romero was kind of having a hard time until Dario Argento, of all people. And for those who don't know, Dario Argento is the guy who brought us Suspiria. He brought us Inferno. He's basically Italian,
Yep.
Other than Lucio Fulci, he's basically Italian's number one.
Rosso.
That.
The Giallo. He's not Giallo, but he came right out of Giallo
Right.
filmmaking.
He's the guy that, when the Giallo genre was kind of at its height, he kind of took a stab at it with Suspiria and then became famous for Suspiria and Inferno and a bunch of other horror Italian movies. So Dario Argento invited George A. Romero and his wife to Italy for, a nice summer vacation or a nice just summer getaway. And Argento sat down with Romero to convince him to do another zombie movie because Argento really loved Night of the Living Dead and thought it was very profound. And ever since then, he's been, ever since then, he's felt like Romero just hasn't made anything to top that. And he felt, so in that, he tried to convince Romero, what would it take to do another zombie movie? Because Romero was, he did you're right, he did The Crazies, which is technically a zombie. It has the zombie formula.
I would call it a zombie. I have a wide open definition of what a zombie is.
Right. But he was still very much, but Romero was kind of I wanted to do different kinds of movies, and actually he had a script ready to go for Night Riders, what would be made a couple years after Dawn, that he wanted to do, but he couldn't get that made. So Argento was like,
and Martin and Season of the Witch, they are not like the Dawn of the Dead or the Dead films. The Season of the Witch is quite a different kind of film. It's a lot more atmospheric. There is nowhere near the same kind of level of immediateness or gore. If you're a certain kind of person, you would consider this a boring film.
Right. Oh yeah. I have not seen Martin, but I've seen people talk about it, and I've seen clips of Martin.
Yeah.
And it's very much more. It's the more inspired of the French New Wave. And that kind of cinema verite style.
And Season of the Witch is half that and half inspired by drama television.
Oh my God.
It's weird. Yes, it's weird.
Oh my God. So with with that, so Romero's like, okay, I'll do this and that, and he has a couple ideas. So Argento is like, well, why don't you stay here in Italy? Free of charge. We'll send you and your wife meals. Or we'll basically, all expense pay, all inclusive pay to
a sabbatical on the Italian Riviera sounds good to me. Yes.
Yeah, and why don't you? Here's a typewriter and just type some pages and and for payment for all of this all inclusive, just send me pages. Just send me pages of the script as soon as you can. So during the day, for 2 months, Romero was just typing away, at the script. And then he came back later, and his wife read it, was like, what do you think you are? You're MGM? We're not going to be able to film in a mall. We're not going to be able to, what, much less have cars drive through a mall, have motorcycles through a mall.
The Tom Savini motorcycle gang. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. We're into the film now, so let's pause for a second. Can we get an insert of the gonk in here real quick? Thank you.
I'll put that later in. But Romero is like, no, we'll figure it out. Let me figure it out. I know let's figure it out. We have a whole community in Pittsburgh that will support us. So let's see what we can do. And if I can't, we'll just work around it.
And if you don't help us out, Mr. Rogers is going to come and kick your ass.
That motherfucker.
And then he gets it. Man, people, if you haven't seen the first three films, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead, fucking go see them already.
And you know what? I'll say this.
Don't you agree with that?
Go see them. Well, we were going to say that at the end.
Well, I will say it again then, damn it.
But here's my thing about but Dawn was actually half film, half half financed by Dario Argento's
Right.
family.
Yeah.
Because Argento, the way Argento got his films financed, Suspiria, Inferno, whatever, was through. He comes from a family of wealth that
Don't we all wish that? I mean,
yeah, that can invest and
Yes.
usually usually his producers find a way to kind of recoup enough of the money to
Still
make
looking
more
for
money.
that forgotten, lost, rich uncle.
Yeah. Where did he go? He
Yeah.
must be living in
On the buck,
Cabo.
come on out.
Cabo St. Lucas.
Yes. Oh, Cabo. We're to Sammy Hagar's bar.
So yeah, Argento put up half of the money to do,
Yep.
and I think the movie ended up costing like $500,000 anyway, maybe more. That was what it was on last time on Wikipedia.
Right.
And then the other half was just like the same kind of investors that have been
Right.
working with Romero for years. So
I mean, you could obviously see that the budget has increased for the second.
Oh,
quite a
yeah.
bit. And it's an interesting film, too, if you don't mind if I segue into the film a little bit. The first part of the film is sort of like an escape from New York kind of a thing. You have this, group of SWAT police going around, like purging buildings of zombies. And it's sort of like, an action, Judge Dredd or an Escape from New York kind of a thing, right?
before those movies came out.
Right. But it's just that kind of a thing. There's this action kind of a movie kind of a feel to that part. And then they get their helicopter and they decide to
Get the hell out of Dodge.
yeah. And
Well, it's a smart decision.
right. But
Everything
it's- and
going
then-
to shit. You
but
see a
then
helicopter.
When they get to the mall, it becomes a different kind of movie. It comes again, Rio Bravo again.
Yeah.
So you have these phases of this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll kind of get into it in Day of the Dead, but
Right.
basically Romero's kind of remaking Night of the Living Dead. All these different times.
So John Carpenter and George Romero are both remaking Rio Bravo over and over again.
Yeah, essentially.
Dean Martin would love it.
By the way, Rio Bravo, go check it out. It's a good movie.
Yes, Howard Hawks. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so Dawn of the Dead, that's just basically the story. Is they found everyone again in New York, and then they sent everybody down to Pittsburgh to film, and the movie opens in like a television studio. Just everything's just going to shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the beginning chaos is always great. I love that.
It is, and it's funny because you see George A. Romero and his wife in there. They're the directors,
Yeah.
and they're like, "What the fuck is going on? Like,
Yeah.
cut, no, cut, what? No, cut, no." Because and you see like the hilarity of it, but but you still feel the tension because of the goblin music that's in there.
Yep.
Provided by Argento and his friends, the Goblin Band. So you feel the tension, even though what's happening in the frame is just pure comedy gold.
Yeah.
But yeah, you see the newscaster's husband come in, or lover come in, or baby daddy, whatever you want to call it. You see them come in, and you see him come in, and it's like, no, we gotta go. Like fucking shit's getting worse.
Yep.
So they go. So they're heading out to the helicopter. But while this is happening, like you said, there's a purge going on in this like apartment complex.
Yep. The two SWAT dudes are, and that's actually quite a harrowing scene too. They're going from stairwell to stairwell, going from apartment to apartment, and in the basement of the film, of the apartment building, people are trying to rescue zombies. They have this caged area where people have got the zombies like quarantined.
And they're eating each other.
Well, that's a pretty interesting sequence, I think. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, and well, it's even more interesting because the scene opens with like this racist SWAT leader.
Yeah.
And he's like, inward this, whatever the term is for Mexicans or Latinos.
SPIC.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then they have they start wind up, instead of shooting zombies, they shoot up living gang members. They go into an apartment and start shooting living humans.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's unintentional as a commentary either.
Oh, yeah.
They're shooting people instead of zombies.
Right. And yeah, and then you see the one SWAT leader kill himself after seeing the one woman get eaten alive by her husband.
Yep.
It's all gnarly, but the best part is when the coolest character in the movie, you don't realize this till later, But when the coolest character in the movie shoots the racist cop in like an unceremonious, just flattering, less gory, just wonderful, just like, bye.
Yep.
Bye, you're out of the movie. It's wonderful. It's a wonder, and it feels intentional in that Romero's just like, no, I'm not going to give this guy a dignified, gory, over the top death.
Yeah.
Like, he's a racist. He deserves it to die.
And of course, the two SWAT teams that wind up, getting on the roof and they meet the helicopter, and the one is bitten. He's already been bitten, and the white one, he's been bitten.
No, that's later in the movie. That's
Okay,
in the second half.
Okay, yeah, but he gets bitten, but not yet. And they escape, and then we go to the refueling scene where they get the scene. That's a really nice scene of the chop of the top of the zombie's head being chopped off by the helicopter rotor blades.
Yeah. I mean, there are some goofy effects, but I mean, this was the start of Tom Savini and his whole makeup
But
crew.
it was so fun. He's like, and then,
Yeah.
The poor guy got his brains sucked out by helicopter blades.
At least he doesn't have to suffer anymore.
That'd be an interesting way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the movie, it just opens very gnarly, and it's the most locations we see because we see the group of, like the National Guard. They're all like happy, celebrating while also shooting people in the head and blowing up cars.
Yeah, we have an opening scene at a TV studio. You've got this apartment block. You've got the helicopter montage. You've got this, out in the middle of the countryside where they refuel.
So yeah, they and then they get to the mall, where they realize they have a nice advantage because if they can just work at the mall, if they can just clean it up, clear out all the zombies in there, and just build some barricades.
Barricade the doors with semi-trucks, man.
Yeah.
Semi-trucks. I think I would weld some skirts onto the trailers myself,
Right. If they can just, they can make, a nice little place for just the four of them. And then there's the interesting commentary of all the zombies, they're just all like rumbling through the parking lot because it's the last place, or that was the place where they know of.
Right. Everybody congregated at the mall, man.
Which was, that was a thing in the 60s and 70s, was the birth of the American indoor mall.
Yep.
It started, and it actually, interesting enough, it started to decline in the 70s. Well, some of it did.
Yeah. I always heard that it was like in the 90s when, the mall culture started to erode, that the big box stores started coming back again, and things started changing. But, yeah, the mall was really, the indoor mall as we know it was, they started producing them like crazy after World War II, so...
Right. Well, that was the birth of, consumerism, and then also teens were allowed to buy stuff in the 50s. So that all added to this, this pandemic of indoor malls all over the country.
Right.
Pandemic's kind of a bad term. Just outright, it went crazy.
So... There's a shitload of them, man.
Yeah.
There's a shitload of them.
And there's a shitload of just empty ones.
Right. And they're getting more, like the one in Gainesville is getting pretty decrepit.
Yeah. No.
And I still go, I'll tell you the truth, oftentimes I still go to the Mall of Georgia to see movies. That's just right down there.
Even that's starting, but that is also starting to show its age.
But I do still go to see movies there, you know what I mean? Still go to...
Well, so do I, even though I prefer the one down the road, the Sugarloaf. Because I have AMC.
Is that the Mills?
Sugarloaf Mills.
Yeah. I actually tell you, if I had my druthers, I would like to live next to, like the Tara or the Midtown Arts or something like that.
Oh, of
Would
course.
be nice. That'd be where I'd rather go.
Well, that's where all the good stuff is.
Yeah, that's where I'd rather go.
Yeah.
I'd rather.
Yeah, because you don't want to live near Atlantic Station or. Even Phipps Plaza is kind of a bit hectic because you just have all that business complex around it. So.
Yeah, I know people. I have, people that I know who actually prefer that. They get their big styrofoamic mansion and it has to be within a proximity of the mall. So I'm not a big fan of that. not a big fan.
We live in a state where we drive everywhere.
Right, and I would prefer, an effective MARTA or whatever. And we're getting off the topic here, right? But,
oh yeah.
But there's
we're talking about malls still.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So the mall is like a thing about suburbia. Mall and suburbia go hand in hand in our idea of America, and I prefer straight out living in the city or out in the country. The whole suburbanite is like hell to me. The suburban nightmarescape for me. It's just stretches of styrofoam houses and big plastic malls, and I don't like it. I don't like it, people. Give me some trees, or give me access to like the Fox Theater. Let me live in town or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or out in the country. One of those two.
Right.
The suburbs, not for me.
I get it. So going back to the mall situation, when they finally get to the mall, they kind of also get embedded in the culture that the zombies were before they were zombies.
Right, exactly.
So I think that's...
And that they were really, like, at the beginning, when they clear out the mall, they have all the zombies, like the kids wearing Little League baseball costumes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're all like these Americana, that have been zombified with that Muzak,
Right. Well, I mean, they've been zombified, and on top of that, they're just stuck in this of much like our characters are, where they're purgatory. It's a nice heaven. They still have the luxury of food, even though they put the zombies in a cold storage, which just burn it.
That's some nice salami right there.
Yeah, fuck that. Fuck putting it in the cold storage. Just create a little fire pit in one of those
incinerate
things.
those guys, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cold storage zombies, man. I don't think I want my cold cuts made from those guys. I don't think.
Yeah, you're contaminating all the food. But they have spam.
Spam.
Don't knock it.
Yeah. Spam. Well, let's survive a nuclear war, man.
Yeah. It better. But yeah, so they become they have their dinner date in the restaurant there. They learn to skate and then shoot at the ice skating ring.
Yeah.
They're very much embedded in the culture of this of the whole.
And then the Tom Savini gang shows up.
Yeah, this is basically kind of an allegory of humanity at its worst. Because if you pay attention, they resolve all their issues between the flyboy who's kind of incompetent and then the SWAT leaders. They all start to work together.
Yeah.
But then it's all rudely interrupted by the monsters of society, the wildlings,
the Hell's Angels stand-in, whatever gang name
right.
they're, led by Tom Savini.
Yep. Led by Tom Savini, a very young Tom Savini, like he looks like a kid in this.
Yeah. He looks okay now. I'd say he's aged pretty well.
He's in his 70s now,
right? But he still has most of his hair and a little goatee.
Yeah, he looks great. He actually posted an Instagram of him reaching 70 yesterday or something.
Mazel tov, brother, Mazel tov.
And he looks fucking great. And
this, so 78 or so was this movie, and also 78 or 79 when Halloween came out. And then right after that, 1980, when Friday the 13th. So this is kind of a big time for those kind of special effects.
Right, Tom Savini was pretty busy at this point. He got to do The Burning, he did some other movie where there was a big head explosion, not Videodrome, but... now it's killing me. I don't know.
Right. Well, he did the head exploding at the end of Friday the 13th.
Right.
So he did that. And, Kevin Bacon getting his neck stabbed.
Yeah. Well, he was the guy.
Right,
if you could afford him, he was the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. This man, his career, boom, took right off. Took right the fuck off right there.
Yeah. Because Dawn of the Dead, just kind of, it was the Pandora's box of gory deaths. Even when you watch the gore, it's a little silly because the blood looks like cherry pudding, very thin, thinned out cherry pudding.
I always think paint, I always think of it as paint.
Yeah. And all the gore.
Too red. There's not enough blue. Yeah.
Yeah, and all the gore stuff is just leftovers from the catering table.
Let's throw a little salami in there. Let's throw a little sausage over there.
Yeah, just throw whatever you got in there. And
Hey guys, you got some gabagool? I'll take some gabagool.
yeah, it's just really incredible. It's really well done. And so I saw I mentioned Dario Argento earlier. So Dario Argento basically supervised the European version in that he edited the movie and cut
it real tight too.
Right.
Apparently. Yeah.
So the theatrical cut's like 2 hours and 7 minutes. This one's about 94 minutes, 94, 95, give or take. And
he's got like 25 minutes off of that son of a gun, didn't he?
Yeah, like 30 minutes. Yeah. And it's a lot meaner. It's a lot cleaner, or it's a lot more just like, it just cuts to the chase.
You say wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of thing.
Yeah. Right? And for me, it's a little bit more effective because, I mean, you just basically have a full-blown Goblin score, whereas in the theatrical cut, you have like some different kinds of mall music and some...
And the gawk.
Yep. You just have like different kind of beats. So, and that's what I kind of liked about the Argento cut, is it's very, very much more like full-on Goblin music, which the Goblin music is just effective in this movie. Yep. However, I think Romero does a really good job emphasizing like the forebodingness of the ending, because the movie ends in a very bleak. It ends here. There is a redemptive arc in the movie, but it does end in kind of like a open-ended movie.
Right.
So the movie ends in both cuts. It ends with Ken Foree's character wanting to stay behind, and he's going to kill himself.
Yeah, he's the one that's infected, turning into a zombie, isn't he?
No, he's not been bitten yet.
Okay. This is the because the policeman, the SWAT team, he was already bit, and he was already turning into a zombie. They had to get rid of him.
Oh yeah, that guy has been taken care of by that point.
They had to get rid of him already.
And this pregnant woman who's now going to drive a helicopter.
Yeah, they teach her how to fly. Yep.
She's getting on board. In the original script, Ken Foree's character shoots himself, and then when this, I can't remember what the pregnant woman's character's name is, but when when Francine hears the gunshot, she just puts her head right up to the helicopter blades, just chopping her head off. And just letting her body get devoured, and getting her body devoured. And
I would have been really interested in that ending. I would have found that a very appropriate ending for the film, actually.
Yeah, and however, Romero, like literally as they were filming, was like, "No, just go ahead, Ken Foree. Go up just start shooting your way up to the ladder, and then climb up, and then."
Had a change of heart, did he?
Just like literally on set, and shot the ending.
Oh well.
And shot the ending, but the ending is still kind of open-ended, kind of foreboding, because
they don't have fuel. They're basically halfway or fumes.
They're on fumes.
You don't know how far they're going to get in this helicopter. So.
Yeah, and on top of that, their place of sanctuary, much like how basically this whole allegory is how the apocalypse is happening.
Yeah.
Basically, now it's all erupted. It's been disrupted. It's been destroyed by both zombies and the outside, cruelty of the world. So now it's been abruptly ended, and now they got to leave to go find another home. And they have to find it quick because they're out of fuel, and she's almost like full-term pregnancy. So they got to go and make this quick. And that's the end of the movie. So, is there any more thoughts on Dawn of the Dead?
Well, not really. I guess you could talk about the hedonism and the consumerism that he's complaining about, as well as the outside forces that want to tear you apart, and the uncertainty of the future. But I think we've pretty much covered that. So, I guess we're on to Florida.
Yeah, essentially.
On to Florida.
Check out Dawn of the Dead. It's actually my least favorite of these three that we're talking about.
I agree. I think the Night of the Dead and Day of the Dead are the best of the three. Yes.
Yeah, It's still a good movie. I still recommend it.
Yeah, if you're going to watch them all. Watch
Yeah.
all of them.
Unfortunately, Dawn of the Dead has some rights, or the home release part of it is in the middle of some rights issues, so it's not commercially available.
Right.
But you can still, I think all the versions of the movie are on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I will not share links just in the case of I get like copyright,
Dun, dun, dun.
Infringed. However, it's easy to find. Just look it up,
Yep.
and on Amazon and eBay are still selling copies of the movie.
Get yourself are they on Blu-ray yet?
I think there is a Blu-ray cut.
Okay. I mean, there's at least a DVD. Not as good. A Blu-ray's better, but...
Oh, yeah. I mean, there is Blu-ray, per se, but that's all. So, Shout Factory, get on that.
Mm-hmm.
Get on that, 4K restoration of Dawn of the Dead. Not the remake, the original.
Yeah. I enjoyed the remake when it first came out, but upon further reflection, it's not as good,
I think it's Zack Snyder's best movie.
Oh, certainly. But it's not as good as George Romero.
Oh, no. It's a good movie. And I think it works a lot because, and I think I mentioned this, when we talked about Batman v Superman, is that Snyder is really at his best when he can concentrate on the visuals and he has a great script. And I think what makes Dawn of the Dead so great is that it has James Gunn's pitch perfect script.
Well, I think that it may not be pitch perfect. The Alamo section where they're in the mall, it loses a lot of the consumerist, hedonistic, anti-capitalist kind of thing. It is a little muddled, and it does slow down quite a bit when they're in the mall. It picks up again when they make their escape and they're trying to get to Lake Superior.
Right.
And they try to find the boat and stuff like that, and you have the fast zombies coming after them, and they've armored their cars. That picks up, but that middle third does get a little sleepy,
Well, same with this one too. The middle third, the second third of this Dawn of the Dead is a little slow.
Right, but it's not as bad as this,
Oh, yeah.
There's more of it says, and for me, the Zack Snyder remake, the first, 15 or 20 minutes, the zombie outbreak, the chaos, is my absolute favorite part. If he had kept up that frenetic pace and that kind of what the fuck kind of stuff throughout, I'd have been happy. But he kind of lost it, and I got a little disinterested, after they got to the mall, because all the crazy stuff, like the guy standing in the street and being run over by an ambulance, and then the ambulance going down to the end of the block and being hit by a tanker truck, and the helicopters and the fires and the breakouts.
The apocalypse happening.
Yeah, that was like, oh man, that's cool. And then it kind of goes away. Yeah, like boring.
Yeah,
boring.
All right, so want to go to Florida?
Yeah, we're in Florida, an assault mine in Florida.
First came the night, then came the dawn. Now comes the most eagerly awaited day in horror film history. George A. Romero's Day of the Dead.
We've been punished by the Creator. We visited a curse.
Hello? Is anyone there?
For the few remaining, their only hope of survival is to find a cure.
You're wasting time trying to define what's happening.
But the odds are against them.
We're in the minority now. Something like 400,000 to 1 by my calculations.
And so is Captain Rhodes.
Anybody else have any questions about the way things are going to run around here from now on?
Their one chance is Bub.
It's working on instinct. A deep, dark, primordial instinct.
But their time is running out.
They can be fooled, don't you see? They can be tricked into being good little...
So, Day of the Dead is the third entry, not the last, but it's the third entry, and the final entry we'll talk about. We'll get... I think
I've seen the others, but, maybe I'd get a refresh on Land of the Dead and Diary of the Dead.
Right. Yeah, for the purposes, I think... Well, I didn't have time to watch the other three, so...
Oh, yeah? Okay. Well, Land of the Dead is where they're in Pittsburgh, and Dennis Hopper has created his own little fiefdom with John Leguizamo as his right-hand man or something. And a sentient zombie trying to walk across the river.
Interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, Day of the Dead. we've got an army base doing research.
Totally a ripoff because Dias de los Muertos is nothing like this at all. That's my Coco joke.
Oh, okay.
So, the movie's called Day of the Dead, but there's a holiday called Day of the Dead in Mexico.
Oh, right.
There went my Mexican.
Dios de los Muertos,
Yeah, no Mexicans in this movie. There, it's just... Well, Miguel, excuse me. I forgot.
Yeah, Miguel is the main love interest of the main character.
Yeah.
Who gets his arm chopped off?
Yeah.
But, a salt mine in Florida.
Yeah.
It's all swamp. I mean, where did they come up with the space under there to have their underground base in Florida?
Uh-huh.
Florida is all swamp, people.
Yep.
The overhead shot at the beginning, they have the helicopter flying over the Fort Lauderdale or whatever. They have the alligator coming out of the zombie corpse, and the zombies coming with the alligator. That's cool.
It is.
That's cool.
It is. So the origin of Day of the Dead was after Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead was actually a pretty big hit. And it did lead to Romero finally breaking out of his Pittsburgh mold and getting Night Riders, made, and then Creepshow, and a couple other films. But he was kind of done with zombies after Dawn, and then I don't remember which movie afterwards, but after it wasn't Creepshow, but it was another movie. I can't remember. He finally said, okay, we'll go ahead and make Day of the Dead.
Right.
The problem was everyone wanted it R-rated. And the Day of the Dead script has, it's even more crazy gory than Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
So
he said apparently while he was working on it, Romero wanted this to be the Gone with the Wind of zombie films.
Yeah.
He didn't have the budget for it, though.
Yeah, and he set out to do it for $7 million, and he couldn't even get that. So, do you remember? Does it say on there?
Yeah, $3.5 million is what he wound up.
Yeah. So for the first time ever, he had to compromise and kind of rewrite the script to where it all took place in the salt mine, except for the beginning and the end. So it was a lot more ambitious, a lot more bigger scope. Same crew as Dawn of the Dead, same everything. Different cast, obviously, but still, it was same crew. But yeah, everybody had to, go in the salt mine. Some of the makeup artists had to play some of the soldiers, like Greg Nicotero.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a smaller movie, and it was the first time he had to compromise. But I'm gonna tell you, man, I thought this one was really good.
Yeah, it's. I think it's the second best of the three, merely because the first Night of the Dead is the first and introduces this, thing, and it's fresh and, innovative and an interesting way of doing a film. But Day of the Dead is, obviously the later composition where he's had some practice with working with the zombies, and the character's a little bit more fleshed out. There's more interpersonal reaction,
Yeah, and essentially, and he's exploring new territory. Every movie he's exploring new territory, but he's exploring the idea that, oh wait, maybe zombies can be more than just, they can be sentient. They can...
Bubba. Yep.
Bubba, yeah. They can react, they can learn, they can maybe be more mobile, but of course the crazy military, they're just like, fuck science, just blow everything up.
And also for me, a highlight of the film is two things. The good guys have their little oasis out in the middle of the back of the mine with their palm trees and their little mobile home
paradise.
area. Yeah, and then you have her having her dream sequence where she's looking at the markings of the countdown till they get out on her calendar, and it starts freaking out, and then all these zombie arms burst through the walls. Isn't it I thought a very competently done dream sequence.
Yeah, and I thought it's and all the dream sequences are done because they feel like dream sequences. I feel like this was just so. Like, this was the most competent
Certainly.
of the three.
Oh, yes.
And I'm not saying none of the others were incompetent. I'm saying that this was like the most like narrative-wise, like the best screenplay,
the best written, the best directed, the most directorly.
Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I mean, George A. Romero came back with something to say.
Yeah, and it's all around a good film about the militarization of culture, if you will, and the breakdown in civilian communication, which we are talking about with Facebook and with fake news today.
Right.
Same thing. That this is this film is 30 years old.
33.
Yeah, okay. So circa 30 years old, and it has to say something that's very relevant to what we're talking about to this very day.
Yeah.
About communication, about news, about how we communicate with other people in our society. How do we go with, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, how do you shake hands and have a turkey pie with each other, right?
Or better yet, how do we, survive in a world where tension is high?
Right. That's what, how do you come together once you've been separated so badly?
And can you? And can you come together?
Right. That's the question. And it doesn't really purely answer those questions. It doesn't give you a happy, rainbows and unicorns answer.
Well, no, I think it does. Maybe not the unicorn happy ending.
Like everybody gets back together and we resolve our differences. No, that they wind up running away from the differences in the end.
Right. Well, I mean, the Romero's response to that question that he's proposing is, if we don't work together, one side is going to tumble.
Yep.
And
but he doesn't propose the solution to it. Because the one faction lets the other faction be eaten by zombies and runs away to a deserted island. So
and they both suffer losses.
Yes,
both
and
sides.
the war is not really won. The zombies are still out there attacking. The problems that they were facing at the beginning of the film are still there.
Yes. So it is very much an idea of we can't run away, but then again, the movie ends with they're fine with where they're at.
Yeah, but it's not. They've basically given up on society and on culture at that point.
Yeah, they're just like, fuck it, we're done.
Right. So it is again kind of a bleak ending.
Well, yeah, all these movies. I mean, Dawn is arguably a happy ending because they get away, but still
It's the most.
It's the happiest you can get.
It's the most upbeat of the three films, right?
But yeah, Day of the Dead ends in this way to where society has broken, but it was the fault of humanity itself.
Yeah, and you look at...
It wasn't the zombies that broke it.
You have on the one side the scientists and the caretakers, who live in their little paradise, the caretakers, and they wind up siding with the scientists. But the one scientist is bad and evil. He's the one that's been feeding, their friends and compatriots to Bubba.
Well,
right? And then you've got the leader of the military side, who's all gung-ho. He's carrying his guns, threatening people with guns all the time, barking orders at everybody, whether they're civilians or not, And like Miguel, he's a military, and he is playing both sides. He's a military, but he's also having an affair with the scientist.
Yeah,
but then he gets bitten, and they chop his arm off, and he winds up sacrificing himself to zombies. So he winds up sacrificing himself to this war, if you will,
Right.
All right.
But yeah, so you're watching society just collapse, and it's and it's sad, but also it's a victory.
Yeah.
But you feel victorious for the zombies because
right. Bubba, and he actually starts reclaiming some of his culture, and he salutes ironically as the military leader is being eaten by a horde of zombies. He gives
John
him a
Polito,
salute, right?
Yeah, it's and that's why it's called Day of the Dead, because the zombies. They're getting their culture back. They're finally now free of not having to be basically kidnapped and taken by Dr. Frankenstein and and experimented on.
Yep.
So, and they finally have their own culture. Hence, it's the Day of the Dead, and I just love it because it's just a really like what all of what you said. It's playing on the society's crumbling. I mean, you just see it. Everyone's just even the military. They're fighting each other.
Yeah.
But even the scientists, you see that, Dr. Frankenstein's feeding.
Yeah,
Even though they're already dead, he's still feeding people to.
Yeah, he's dishonoring their dead. It's an insult, is what he's doing, and it's a cultural insult, and you can see that in the way that people treat each other in this climate. You've got the Democrats on one side and the Republicans on another, and they both
and they both are fighting for the good. Like Polito's, I think it's Jack Polito's character. I think that's his Rhodes. He's fighting basically.
Rhodes,
He's fighting to save. He's fighting to stay alive.
Yeah.
And he wants to just know how to best combat.
Yeah.
Best survive.
Soldier.
Yeah. Whereas Dr. Frankenstein's like, no, I want to learn from this. I want to
understand.
I want to understand. And on the flip side, which I agree with this in science, is that in science, if we learn to understand what we're dealing with, we can possibly control it.
Sure. Understanding is better. I am a scientificalist. I guess that you would call me a scientific materialist,
right?
In that I believe in a natural and causative nature of the universe, and I believe that science is our best tool to use to understand that universe. And so I generally agree with the scientists. That Dr. Frankenstein, that's his nickname. I can't remember the character's actual name, but
we'll just stick to that.
Yeah, he takes it a little too far. He gets a little too
Logan. That's what Dr. Logan.
Yeah, but they call him Dr. Frankenstein in the film, don't they?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Rhodes does.
Yeah, Rhodes and some of the military dudes, and they have a point that Dr.
Logan
has overstepped. He's a little too zealous, I think, in his pursuit.
Yeah, I mean they're overreacting.
Right. Well,
like a lot.
Rhodes and Logan are both two flip sides of that coin.
They're both on different kinds of psychopathy.
Yes. They're both the opposite reactions. They're both the taking that idea too far, Right. And they both pay the price.
Yeah, they do. They pay it with their lives.
Yep.
More brutally Rhodes, because I mean
he lived by the sword, died by the sword, kind of a thing. So right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
the main characters wind up fleeing to a desert island after they try to save the one.
And it's a black guy and a blonde woman, or a white woman.
And an English guy.
Yep.
And
same as
Miguel, the scene where they take him back to the trailer and they try to save his life by chopping his arm off and cauterizing it. Oh man, that's a scene, isn't it?
All the gore effects in this movie is incredible. I mean, there's the scene where the guy is just completely disemboweled. Yeah. He's getting up, and then everything pours out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, wow, like Savini was on it.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff, man. And and I've said this before. If you haven't seen these three movies, go out and see them now.
Yep. So go check out these movies. They're really good, and especially Day of the Dead. I think it was a great movie, really good, entertaining blockbuster. Is there anything else you want to add?
Aside from that, go check them out. If you're interested in horror and you are interested in doing horror thriller kind of stuff, these are seminal films that you have to see and understand and study to be a good horror filmmaker, I'd say.
Right. And I would also add that, look, Night of the Living Dead is... these movies are available, but, I mean, Dawn of the Dead is still hard to find. But, yeah, go check them out. As far as the other 6 movies, I did not have time to go through them, or we would be talking about them still.
We could do a part 2.
I'm open to that. Let's do a part 2 later.
I've actually seen these films, so if you want to catch up and just do it sometime, let me know. I'm down. All right.
So yeah, we'll do a part 2 later
with the more mature Romero movies.
Yes, in the 21st century, because this was Day of the Dead was the last of the 20th century, so we'll do 21st century when we come back in part 2.
He's had 20 years to think about it.
Yes.
Yes.
Had a lot to say in between that time.
He has. Yes.
So we will stop right here for now. And continue on in part 2. Justin, do you have any plugins or things you want to bring up?
I think we're getting to the point now where we're going to have Bear Gator, so look out for Bear Gator. We're going to get that up on the portfolio site, and I guess that if I come up with a Bear Gator website, I'll give you the link, But in the meantime, watch out for Bear Gator, man.
Yep, watch out for Bear Gator. And you can find me on Twitter at MovieKale. You can also follow this show for more updates and whatnot at The Youth Critic. And then you can also follow the channel that distributes this podcast at KHC Network. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back with you next time, either with the part 2 of this or something with Suspiria.
That sounds good.
Yep.